Welcome to the Awaken on Purpose podcast, where each week you'll hear inspirational stories of heart-centered leaders who have awakened to their higher purpose and taken that leap of faith to follow their heart and make an impact in the world. Get ready to be enlightened, empowered, and transformed with your host, Jennifer Spohr.
It is my pleasure to welcome Tanya Obeng to the show today. She is an entrepreneur, director of Lifted and Gifted Education, and a communication doctor helping executives, CEOs, and senior leaders to return to work with confidence. Tanya, I'm so pleased to have you join us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's lovely to be on your podcast. It's lovely, Jennifer.
Oh, thank you so much. So with that being said, I know that our listeners will want to know what inspired you to do the work that you're doing today. How did you get to where you are now from where you were before you started doing this work, before you discovered your calling?
Oh, Jennifer, that's such a big question because I have repositioned so many times in my life and I feel that it is my path to do so. I have gone through so much in terms of the anxiety, the burnout, and I feel part of that is because I was a deep perfectionist and always looking for something more. So I do run my company, as you mentioned earlier, Lifted and Gifted Education, which is a company that helps children with alternative ways of learning. So it's workshops like dance and drama and maths and music and all that sort of thing. So I kind of use the academic and infuse the arts with that. And the other side to me is, as communication doctor, I do the consultancy from the perspective of helping people who have lost their confidence or have taken time out on long-term absenteeism to find the strength and the confidence to unlock that creativity and return to work with a sense of self. So that's mainly what I do. So the reason that I do it, to kind of answer your question, is because of my own journey, of my own experiences.
And what is it, if you don't mind sharing with us, what is it more specifically about your own journey that inspired you to do that work?
I tell you, there's so many stories, but I will start quite recently because my transition on the last 2 years to communication doctor is because I've gone through my own burnout. I lost both my mother and my father within a month of each other and felt that deep grief. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I'd lost that unconditional love. And that affected me on a very, very deep level. But the other side, or the positive side to that, was I felt like I was also going through an awakening where I woke up, where I started to be more aware of people's vulnerability. And as an empath, I started to really feel that sensitivity and know that that sensitivity is actually a strength and not a weakness. And sometimes people go through what they go through. And when you're aware, you can help others to build that strength, to build themselves up. So I took about a year out, and lucky I had Lifted and Gifted as my main company. And before I set up Communication Doctor, I took that time out and did very creative things like going back to painting and going back to singing and doing things that made me feel really good, to come back to a sense of self. And through doing that, I realised that I really do need the arts in my life, or already having the arts in my life, but the arts are very healing. And I also feel that it helps you to move to that other stage when you're going through any kind of deep grief, burnout, anxiety, and so forth. So I devised a program after taking time out myself, and as a leadership coach myself before that, because I was a leadership coach, did lots of work within schools. I've kind of used all of those skills to develop this program to help people go through what I've gone through and give them the strength to come back with a sense of purpose.
The work you do is so important. And I just want to say, I'm really sorry for the loss of your parents. I mean, losing one parent, but then both within such a short period of time, I can only imagine how challenging that was for you.
It was challenging. And I suppose it's part of life, really. Grief is a part of life. And I always feel I'm very lucky to have had the experience that I had with my parents, because I also am aware that some people lose their parents from a lot of a younger age and have to go through it. And some people lose their brothers. I've spoken to so many different people who have grieved, and it has helped me with my journey as well.
It's often, for many of us, there is often the loss of a loved one, the loss of a job, or some type of tragedy or trauma that essentially shakes us awake. Something that you said that I think is really key is that you had mentioned that for the first time in your life after the loss of your parents, you felt like you didn't have that unconditional love. And I know that for me, when I lost my mom, it really prompted me to go within, because although we have people in our lives, right, who we feel may provide us that unconditional love, really unconditional love is something that comes from within us rather than just externally. Would you agree with that?
Yes, totally. And it's a journey for me. I think it was a bit of a shock to realise that that was what was going on, and that was the feeling. That's why it felt so hard. But yes, it is something within us, and part of that is us learning how to really love ourselves and appreciate the blessings in the world and the blessings that we have around us. I always say kind of to acknowledge gratitude in our life is really important and a kind of a key step, because sometimes we live in a world that's very aesthetics. At some point we're thinking about, what car somebody drives, how big their house is, and all of these things. And these things are important to a certain degree, but then we kind of forget about simple things like the trees and the birds and what we have around us and our children, if you're fortunate enough to have children, or just, people that are in our lives that are our soul family, people that connect us, people that spend time with us, all the simple things. And sometimes we take people and what we have around us for granted instead of honouring it.
Absolutely. First of all, I agree with you. I'm just trying to think about where to start unpacking here, because there are so many key points that you bring up in what you just said. We live in a world, yes, that very much is all about looking externally for solutions, for happiness, for joy, and for fulfillment. But it really is a state of being. It's not really the things, that we want. It's the feeling that those things bring to us. And many of us are brought up to believe that we need to look externally for solutions. And I feel like we get caught up into this trap of thinking that there's a cookie cutter way to achieve perceived success in life. And so we kind of just blindly follow that, right? And then it takes us getting to a certain point to figure out that, that success is really something that looks differently for each of us. And really what we need to focus on is just aligning our lives, our work, our relationships, everything, aligning everything in our lives with what brings us joy, because that's really what it's all about, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah, I always say, whatever brings us joy, and what I like to say is whatever feeds your soul. And when you realise what brings you joy, feeds your soul, whatever you want to call it, it's great to do more of that and to embrace it, and embrace it fully. And sometimes it could be the simple thing. And for me, it is tapping into my creative chakra, you could call it, and connecting with myself on that level and doing things like taking time out to sing, taking time out to paint, taking time out to just laugh and spend quality time with my kids. So simple things, really. Yeah.
Absolutely. Every experience in our lives shapes who we are, who we've become today. What experience in your life do you feel has been the most significant in shaping who you are right now?
You know what? Just recently, as I said, it has been the grief. But I suppose even before that, I suppose the most significant change in my life is going back to the age when I was 28 years old. And I had a career in dance. I was a professional dancer and also a teacher. So I used to teach dance and also work professionally as a dancer. And at the age of 28, I was in a ballet class. I was doing a ponche. And as I did it, I came out of it and I had my left Achilles, which was torn. And that affected my dancing. So I had to stop going to auditions. And I had a real transition in my life from seeing the physio and then changing my whole career to going into teaching. So that was a real wake-up call for me, because before that, I was all about expressing myself using my body. And I took great pride in the work that I did. But then I realised that this body is a great tool, but there's other levels to it. There's other stages to it. And obviously when you have an injury, when you get pushed down, you've got to pick yourself up again. And again, it took some time for me to pick myself up to say, okay, I'm going to go down this route and go seriously into teaching and working into mainstream schools. And I went on that route. And as I went on that route, I discovered new things about myself. So that was my real kind of turning point, I suppose, looking back. And I do find it interesting that it's at the age of 28, because I'm very much a believer in numerology. And I do believe in this 9-year cycle. And I think the older you get, you start to see that the changes happen in those cycles. And there is no kind of end, but there's significant things that tend to happen at different points of people's lives when you start to look back. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what you touched on there just now is so important, because there is meaning in everything. Yes. A lot of people feel kind of like they just go throughout life sort of being a victim of circumstance. And it's true that we can't control everything that goes on around us, but we have absolute control over how we choose to perceive and react to what goes on around us. Everything, in fact, is very on purpose, very intentional in the universe, whether you look at that from a spiritual standpoint or a scientific one, right? You know, numbers have meaning. There is cause and effect in play all the time.
And it's only when you look back, you start to see it. Sometimes you don't see it as it's happening. And that's what I feel. It took me a long time to realise the changes. And now I look back, I can clearly see those points that I have repositioned or I have built myself up again. And it's just really interesting.
Do you feel that that experience has prompted you to be more present in the now?
Yes. Oh, well, I suppose before that, my injury, I did look at life in a very different way. That was also the beginning of me going to meditate, the beginning of me looking at the world in a different way and wanting to know a little bit more about, you know, why we connect with people in such a different level. Also, I think it was the first time I read The Secret when I was about the age of 28, 29 as well. And just started to have a look at a lot of self-help books, a lot of spiritual books, and just started looking around and thinking, you know, there's more to life than what I thought it was. So it's the beginning of a journey that definitely did prompt me.
What advice would you have for others who are feeling called to do more? I don't know, before you answer that question, I don't know if you felt this way on your journey, but I certainly did. And that is that I felt called to make a change in my life initially, but didn't take action because I was fearful about an unknown path ahead and about wondering, basically, you know, at 40 years old, could I do anything else in terms of a career? So it actually took me a couple of years to essentially get to a point where the pain of where I was at exceeded my fear of kind of, you know, deciding to create a new path. And that was when my mom passed. Mm. So there are a lot of people out there, right, who might be questioning themselves or at some type of crossroads. what advice would you have for those people in order to help them to actually take that leap of faith?
I suppose I'd have a couple of things that I'd say. The first thing I would say is listen to that gut feeling. Ask yourself what that first step that you need to take is. And when you start looking for something more and you're called to do more, remember it's a process and you don't have to go really fast. But if you have that calling and that gut feeling that's drawing you to do something more in terms of something more humanistic, let's say, then just go for it. Just jump on that ship and go for it. Totally, is what I would say.
What you said is important about, I don't think you worded it exactly this way, but taking baby steps.
Yes.
A lot of people feel like they have to go from 0 to 60, and then they get overwhelmed and then they end up doing nothing because of that, right? Perfectionism comes into play, and it's really those imperfect actions, those little baby steps every day are what add up to those significant shifts.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. Whatever you want to call it, baby steps, step by step, everything that we do has to be a process. I always call it processing. Sometimes things happen, you get a gut feeling, you have to process that gut feeling and then decide what's the best move to take forward. And for everybody, it's different because everybody's feelings different. What everybody's experiencing is different. But we have this calling, this so-called awakening that you get and you feel, oh, I want to experience this, or I want to try this, or I feel called to maybe approach a women's charity and speak to women who are going through something quite specific, or whatever you're called to do. Just take it step by step. And if you feel that is your calling, then go for it. That would be my advice, definitely.
Fantastic advice. And our souls crave expansion, right? So many of us are taught to fear change, but change is actually a great thing.
Yes. My whole life has been changed. It has. And I look back and I feel that I've been criticised for it, by people close to me. Some people would always say, well, Tanya, why don't you just get stable into one job? And I look back and I feel like that wasn't my path, because I've learned so much from doing so many different things. And as a creative, I need to be continually channeled with different energies and different things. So that's how I work. Some people can stay in a 9-to-5 job for the majority of their life and be very happy. But that wasn't me, because I've always wanted to explore and try something different. So right now I'm working on a podcast as well. And what I'm finding really lovely about it is doing the editing. Rather than paying someone to do it, I'm learning a new skill with GarageBand. So everything is continuous. And if you are somebody who continually wants to learn, there is always something more to learn. So as long as you have that open mind, you can go and explore that. And I think that's the creative in me.
I want to touch on something that you mentioned about your loved ones' opinions toward your decisions for your life. A lot of people do hold themselves back because of the opinions of their loved ones. But something that I feel is important to understand is that everyone is on their own journey. Each one of us is a product of our beliefs and our past experiences, and we kind of just know what we know. So although our loved ones are well-meaning, it's really important to understand that they may not be capable of providing us sound advice to move forward on a path that isn't in alignment with who they are.
Yes, exactly. And sometimes what happens is other people judge you by their experience, and everybody's experience is unique. And just mentioning loved ones, at the time it was mainly kind of family members, or people would encourage me and say, why don't you get a proper job? I was told that many different occasions from different people in the family. Why don't you find some kind of stability? And as I look back, I think this is my stability. It may not be your stability, but it's my stability in terms of I do like to explore, and I feel quite stable and secure in exploring something new in my life. And we're all different, but what happens is sometimes people tend to judge others based on their experiences. And I do believe that's wrong, because everybody's experience is different, and everybody's choice to live the life the way they live their life is down to them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tanya, how can someone find you? And is there anything else that you want to share with us in terms of the work that you're doing?
Basically, you can find me if you Google Tanya, the communication doctor. I've got a YouTube channel, and I set that YouTube channel up to help other entrepreneurs and solopreneurs have a voice and tell people about what they do to promote them. This was why I set the YouTube channel up. I've also got my website, which is www.communicationdoctor.co.uk. And, and if you want to have a look at some of the other work I do, it's Lifted and Gifted. Again, it's www.liftedandgifted.co.uk. And so, I'm out there, I'm doing various different things. One of the courses that I really am promoting right now is Unlock Your Creativity. And that is about helping people to go on a 10-week journey of doing exactly what I say, unlocking their creativity and finding those things that open them up, because it opens you up to different ideas. So, for example, if you work in sales, it's something really good as well, just to open up and find new ways of working and new ways of doing stuff. So if you do want to work with me and you want to come find me, if you just Google me, if you look at Tanya Communication Doctor, then you'll find me, and I'll be happy to have a 20-minute consultation with you, and we take it from there. Yeah.
Tanya, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and for sharing more about your story, which I feel a lot of people, myself included, most definitely resonate with. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. Thank you. It's been lovely to be a guest on your show, and it's just nice to share with the world. I think what the message is in this podcast today is just to do what you feel, and if you feel that somebody's clipped your wings off, put them back on and go and fly.
Exactly. Keep moving forward. That's what matters.
That's right. Keep flying. I love the idea of flying, because it feels like you're flying really, or you're high, or in that high vibration when you're doing what you love.
Thanks so much, Tanya.
Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you for listening to the Awake and On Purpose podcast. Please visit us and subscribe to the podcast at awakeandonpurpose.com so you never miss an episode. To learn more about how you can connect with your higher purpose and take that leap of faith to make your impact in the world, visit us at jenniferspor.com. And while you're there, be sure to join our email list for exclusive offers and a weekly dose of inspiration.